Hi, it's summer and it's a little bit late, but this is my November and December wrap up. I only read 4 books in November, so I decided instead of just doing a wrap up for those 4 books, I would just lump it in with December. I read 12 books altogether between those 2 months, and pretty much all of them I listened to on audio. And I only just realized when I was getting the books together for this video that I only physically own 2 of them. There are a few of these that I would love to have copies of, so hopefully you'll see those in a future book haul from me. I'm going to go in order and just start with the ones that I read in November. The first book that I read was Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is book 2, I think, in the From Blood and Ash series. This was a reread for me. It was really fun. I gave this book 4 stars when I read it for the first time, I think last year, and I'm sticking with that rating this time around as well. The first book in the series is called From Blood and Ash, and it follows a main character named Poppy. She has been raised her whole life as the maiden, and the future of her kingdom and stuff is linked to her and her being the maiden and doing the things that the maiden is supposed to be doing. She's not allowed to do anything. She's super sheltered. She goes through a lot of abuse actually in this place that she's living. So the series is all like high fantasy and stuff. And in addition to all of like the politics and stuff, there's also these creatures called Craven that are super creepy. They're killing people. There's also maybe some like uprising things happening. I haven't finished the series, but it's one that I really like. I feel like fans of Sarah J. Maas books will really like this one, and this was just a really fun reread. I think that I started the next book in the series, but I only got like halfway through the audiobook, and I just kind of like soft DNF'd it because I wanted to read books that were new books to me. So I'll eventually pick that one back up again, but this was my first read in November. After that, I picked up Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This was the pick for my in-person book club that I go to. This was our book that we were going to be discussing at the beginning of December, so I read it in November. This one kind of had similar vibes to It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I feel like I'm having kind of a hard time remembering the details. I think it's about this woman who has moved back to kind of her hometown. When she was younger, her dad had this like cabin getaway for them that they would go to on the weekends and stuff. And so as a teenager, when they would go visit there, she got to know the neighbors really well. So I think she's returning back to that city, and she runs into one of the neighbor boys that she had a relationship with back when she's a teenager. And it's obviously pretty forgettable because I straight up can't remember hardly any of the details about this book. I do remember though that I had a problem with the teenage sex scenes being described. I feel like this is an adult book, and so any of those like underage sex scenes should have been like closed door. It just made me feel kind of gross, and I just would skip through them if I could. I gave it 3 stars, but honestly, I kind of maybe would even give it a 2.5 now. I know a lot of people love this book, but it just like wasn't one of my favorites. After that, I read Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochran. I really loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm going to read my Goodreads review for this one. I said, I loved this book. I had so much in common with Ellie. I loved the characters, Christmas activities, and tropes. They were marriage of convenience, second chance romance, only one bed, like all of my favorites. There was also so much awesome representation. The only things that bugged me were how Ellie said that Jack smelled like bread like 30 times, and hearing about Ellie's fear of failure got kind of annoying. I overall really enjoyed reading this and could see myself doing an annual reread. This is the perfect book to get into the holiday spirit. I really did have so much in common with the main character Ellie. Just to name a couple of things, she loves Avatar: The Last Airbender, she's a Swiftie. I think she also had social anxiety, but I might be making that up. But really, I think the only thing I didn't have in common with her was that she's demisexual, so it was just so fun to read about a character that was really similar to me. This one is about Ellie, who works at a coffee shop, and she is like in desperate need of money. One of her regulars at the shop kind of like asks her to do this like marriage of convenience with him. He comes from big money, and his grandfather just passed away and left him a bunch of money, but he can only access it once he's been married. So he told her that if she marries him, he'll split some of the money with her. So she agrees, but part of the deal is that she has to spend Christmas with his family to convince them that the marriage is real. Ellie also writes like a webcomic, and we get to see little snippets of that as the book goes on. If I'm remembering right, the book opens up with one of those scenes, and we're hearing about last Christmas that she spent with this woman named Jack. And when she goes to spend Christmas with this guy's family, she finds out that his sister is Jack. So it's kind of awkward. They're trying to figure out how to like act around each other. And it was exactly what I was looking for. It had like the romance and stuff, but also all of the fun Christmas vibes. They were doing, like I said in the review, tons of Christmas activities. It also has a like snowed in trope, which is one of my favorite things ever. It's like the forced proximity kind of thing, but I especially love that if it's like they're snowed in. I highly recommend this one. I really loved it. After that, I read another Christmas book, and this one was so popular on Bookstagram and stuff this year. It's Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 as well. This book was so cute. The vibes were perfect. This one is about Stella and Luca. They've been best friends for like 10 years. Stella owns a Christmas tree farm. The tree farm is kind of in financial trouble, so Stella decides to enter this Instagram contest An influencer named Evelyn is kind of hosting it, and she's going to visit each of the small businesses that are entered and pick one to win a huge cash prize at the end. And also she's going to give them a lot of like media attention and stuff. To kind of like fluff up her application for this contest though, she decides to say that she runs the Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend, which she doesn't have. So she asks Luca to be her fake boyfriend. I think my favorite thing about this whole book was the chemistry between Stella and Luca. Like I said, they've been friends for a decade, and you can really feel that depth in their relationship. You can feel the history there, just in how they interact with each other, how they talk to each other. They were just so sweet together. I loved seeing their interactions and stuff. This also has like the best small town vibes. We get to meet several of the people that are in this town that own like a florist shop, a coffee shop. Stella's business partners are also really fun to get to know. There's Beckett, and I think her name is Layla. This book was just so fun. I definitely see a reread in my future eventually. I just barely read the second book in the series and loved it. So this is also kind of, I think, a new favorite author for me. This one is definitely worth the hype though, in my opinion. Actually, I'm not done yet. I forgot to say that the only reason that it didn't get a 5 was because I didn't really love the third act conflict that happened. That was it though. I still really loved this book. Now we're moving into December books. So the first one that I read that month was Apple Cider Sling by Julie Ann Lindsay. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really regret reading Lovelight Farms so close to Apple Cider Sling because they are so similar. Apple Cider Sling takes place on an apple orchard. It's the main character and her grandma that own and run it, and it also is having financial trouble. Her grandma's like arch nemesis is found dead in one of their apple presses, and so the murder is being blamed on the grandma. And then the main character is trying to clear her grandma's name. It's set around Christmas. There's a struggling farm. There's kind of a mystery going on because there is a mystery aspect in Lovelight Farms as well. I just found this one to be so predictable, and it took some fun out of the story for me, but I did love the Christmas and small town vibes. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. After that, I read Green Glass House by Kate Milford. I gave this one 4 stars, and on Goodreads, I said the setting of this book was so cozy and I 100% need to stay at Green Glass House. It was such a sweet read with a great family dynamic, a fun mystery, and an awesome plot twist. I couldn't give it a full 5 stars because I was kind of confused for some of the book. So many characters and backstories to keep track of, but overall, I really loved this one. This one is about Milo, and his parents run this smuggler's inn called Green Glass House. It's winter break and he's really excited just to like have some downtime and stuff, and then all of a sudden a bunch of these people come to the inn. And so he's kind of mad because he's gonna have to help work through Christmas break and stuff. The people that are coming to stay are very interesting, and there's kind of some mysteries and stuff going on. He ends up playing this game with one of the kids that's around his same age, and they're kind of investigating, and they have like these fake names and stuff. It was just a really sweet story, and it actually almost made me cry a couple of times. I really loved this one, and it was perfect for like Christmas, wintertime. Also, pretty much all of these books that I read in December are in my December reading vlogs. So if you want any more kind of like in-depth thoughts on any of them, they'll probably be in those videos. After that, I read A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. This one is about an adult film star named Bee, and she wants to get into the real film industry, and she gets the opportunity to be in basically a Hallmark Channel movie that's set during Christmas. And she's going to be co-starring with her like teenage crush who was part of a boy band years ago. She can't let anyone know what her job is though, just because of the type of movie that she's in. It's clean and family friendly. It would just be really controversial. The movie that they're filming is like a historical Christmas romance. So this town is all Christmas themed. It's decorated for Christmas. The holiday vibes were awesome. On Goodreads, I said this book was so steamy. OMG, I was blushing so many times. It's also one of the funniest books that I've read. Such a fun read, and I loved the chemistry between the main characters. I also loved the plus size rep, queer rep, and that it was sex positive. The reason I didn't give it a full 5 is that some of the sex work and porn things were a little heavy-handed. Overall, I loved it though, and I highly recommend the audiobook. The audiobook really was so awesome. I felt like the narrator for Bee sounded exactly how I pictured Bee in my head. And like I said, this book is also so steamy. And it's not even like there are like a ton of sex scenes or anything. It's just that the few that we get are very descriptive and well written. I just had a really fun time with this book. After that, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I gave this 5 stars. I love this book so much. I need more cozy fantasy in my life. This book is about Viv, who's an orc who decides to lay down her sword and open up a coffee shop in a town that has never even heard of coffee. It's very slow paced because you're just hearing about her building the cafe, getting all of her equipment together, hiring people, adding things to the menu, getting to know the locals, that kind of a thing. And it was exactly what I needed. There's also a really sweet female-female romance in this one. And there is also still some action if you want some of that in your book. If you love medieval fantasy and baking and coffee, and you just want something super atmospheric that feels like it's giving you a hug, like this is definitely your book. Also, there's this little mouse named Thimble, and he bakes, and oh my gosh, I love Thimble. Also, oh my god, I have to show you this fan art that I found. I'm pretty sure that Megan from the Ginger Hobbit posted these, and that's how I found them. I don't remember who the artist is, but I'll make sure that I put it on the screen and in the description. But there's this one of Viv and Tandry, so beautiful. I'm in love with this. And then there's also one of Thimble, and oh my gosh, I just love it when people make fan art for books and stuff because it's not like a movie or TV show where everybody sees pretty much the same thing. Since books are so subjective and left up to your imagination, it's hard to know if somebody like sees something the same way that you do. So I feel like fan art is just people like validating your reading experience a little bit, and people are just so freaking talented. If you see any more fan art for this book, you have to send it to me. Anyway, I loved this. It's worth the hype. You need to go read this book. After that, I read The Christmas Murder Game by Alexandra Benedict. I gave this one 3 stars. This one is about the main character who is returning back to the place that she was raised. I think it was like a hotel or just like a huge mansion or something. And I think every year around Christmas, all of the family members would be invited back to participate in these like games. There would be a big prize at the end, and it was the aunt, I think, that would organize the whole thing. She was the one who owned the house and also the one that raised the main character. So this year, everyone gets invited back for Christmas, but the aunt has just barely passed away. But she leaves a note for everybody saying that whoever wins the Christmas game this year is going to win the entire house. The relationships between all of these family members are really strained, so there's a lot of drama that happens. On Goodreads for this one, I said this was a fun Christmas mystery with a game element and lots of family secrets. I got pretty confused trying to keep track of all of the characters and found it pretty predictable. It was good, just not very memorable. And I stand by that because I really can't remember too much beyond the synopsis to tell you in this review. I do think that I would have enjoyed this book a little bit more if I would have read it physically. I found out after I finished it that there is a map of the house and a family tree, so it helps you keep track of everybody a lot easier, and I feel like that would have helped me a lot to not feel as confused. So I liked this one okay, but I'm not really gonna think about it a whole lot. After that, I read Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. This one is about these 2 friends that have known each other for like years and years, I think almost 10 years. And they really only ever see each other every year during Christmas when they are flying back home to Dublin. The first couple of times that they were on the same flight home together were a little bit of a fluke, but after that they just kind of decided to make it a tradition to fly home together. So I loved, just like in Lovelight Farms, that there's so much history between these characters. I just really loved seeing how they interacted and stuff. This year though, when they meet up at the airport, they find out that their flight has been canceled, and she decides that she's going to get him home for Christmas by any means possible. So it's this fun little adventure of them like doing all of these crazy last minute things to try and get home to Dublin from Chicago, I think. So this book did give me a little bit of anxiety with all of like the last minute travel things, like last minute flights, like that just stresses me out so bad. On Goodreads, I said my potential rating for this book was all over the place while I was reading, but that ending, I loved it. This book definitely stressed me out because of all of the traveling, LOL, and I wanted more cozy Christmas vibes, so that's what I was having a hard time with in the middle. But everything that happened in the last third of the book really worked for me. I loved the chemistry between the main characters, and you could definitely feel the depth of their friendship/relationship and their history together. I think upon reread, I might even give it a 5-star. I had kind of like weird and different expectations about this book before I went into it, so now that I know what it's about, I think that I would maybe rate it a little bit higher the next time I read it. This was such a fun rom-com, and it's one that I can definitely see myself rereading again this time next year. After that, I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. This one is about a woman and her wife who is some kind of like oceanographer, and she's been sent on this like deep sea exploration that went wrong. So now she's acting kind of strange and won't really say what happened to her while she was down there. I really liked the writing style in this one. It felt very like fluid and kind of stream of consciousness. You'd be hearing about like a current day situation, and then it would kind of like make its way into a flashback of them when they were just like dating or something, and then it would kind of like make its way back to the main situation current day. It just all flowed really well. It was beautiful writing. This one is also dual POV, so you get to see both wives' perspectives, which is one of my favorite things. This book is kind of hard to describe, but I would say if you're wanting like a fast-paced kind of murder thriller-y kind of book, this is not that kind of book. This is very much like a slow, melancholic kind of horror book. It has really heavy themes of grief and loss. And I don't know, just like the tone of this book was so good. The writing, like I said, was just beautiful. And I do think that the little bit of horror that was kind of sprinkled throughout this book was done really well. And then my last book of December and also of 2022 was The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This was our book club pick for December that we were going to be talking about in early January. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. This one is following the main character, Sarah, and she's a defense attorney. And she decides to defend her cheating husband after his mistress is found dead. This book was wild. It was entertaining, but I felt like the pacing was really off. The first 3/4 of the book were like really slow and kind of drawn out. And then the last fourth just like had so many things going on. Just not good pacing. I just felt like you had to suspend so much disbelief to enjoy this book, and I just was not able to do that. Like, I don't think it's legal for someone to defend a family member in court. At the very least, it's unethical. So I had a hard time with that. The police station that was dealing with the murder was driving me absolutely crazy. They were being like so unprofessional, and maybe it's just that it was like a small town, like police station or something. But like, I don't think that you can treat a homicide how they were treating it. There were a couple of other things that were unrealistic to me that are kind of spoilers, so I can't really say them. I was just kind of wondering, like, has this author ever seen a crime show before? I kind of feel like I could have written a better murder crime story just based off of all the TV that I've watched. To me, it just felt like there wasn't very much research put into this book before being written. So I don't know, it was okay. There were definitely some elements of this book that like took me by surprise, but a lot of it honestly just kind of like pissed me off a little bit. Those were all of the books that I read in November and December though. Let me know in the comments if you read any of the same books as me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.